Hello, New York. Hi, coming to you from Minneapolis and St. Paul. It's really great to be with you. An honor to be at your convention, and thank you all so much for being here today. I'd love to just give you a quick overview of what's going on in the campaign and what I think really just an historic, incredible opportunity that we have right now as the Green Party to help move the nation, the states, the locals, and indeed our planet forward in the direction that we need to go. A direction that we as Greens have been forging for decades. We have been ahead of the curve, but the curve has suddenly caught up to us in a big way. So I want to first just start by thanking from the bottom of my heart the Green Party activists who've been out there for the long haul, creating this party whose time has come. America is ready for it. There is a movement for democracy and justice which is breaking out all around us, from the democracy revolutions in the Middle East to the uprisings in Wisconsin, the Occupy protests across the nation, the NATO protests, and the G8 protests in Chicago, which I will be returning to shortly after this phone call. It's very exciting to see the spirit of democracy, justice, and peace rising up all around us. And as democracy is breaking out, people are also breaking away from the establishment political parties in record numbers. So you put it together, it means that in this election, we can make this a powerful tipping point to start taking back the promise of our democracy and the peaceful, just, green future that we deserve. We need this tipping point because, as you know, we have hit the breaking point for people, the planet, the economy, and our democracy. And we didn't get here by accident. We got here thanks to the policies of the political establishment, both its Republican and its Democratic wings, which have delivered crisis after crisis. And Barack Obama has essentially embraced the policies of George Bush, and in many cases has gone to even further dangerous and destructive extremes. And I'm going to rattle through the list just because it's a very important part of this discussion that we as Greens are having with our progressive and our activist colleagues and friends and neighbors. It's really important to put the facts on the table that both parties, Barack Obama just as much as George Bush, have given us together the massive bailouts for Wall Street, $700 billion under Bush, but trillions under Barack Obama. The layoffs for workers, the declining wages for workers, thanks in part to the free trade agreements, so-called, which have been expanded by this president. The expanding wars. This has not been the president, anything but. He withdrew from Iraq only because it was George Bush's withdrawal date, and he was forced to for lack of having criminal immunity for our soldiers. But in fact, we have expanded the wars into Somalia and Yemen, the drone wars, and Pakistan. Likewise, the foreclosure crisis continues. Students are facing unprecedented and insurmountable debt, basically an entire generation that's become indentured servants. The policies of Obama and Romney are no different on student debt. They have both promised to essentially stay the course. The attack on our civil liberties has been greatly ramped up by this president, as has the attack on immigrant rights and on the environment as well, where Obama not only embraced the drill baby drill policies of George Bush, but actually undermined international climate accords, basically assuring that nothing will be done until it is too late. So this is that wake-up moment right now for so many people. There is a movement for democracy and justice. We deserve a voice in this election and a choice at the polls that is not bought and paid for by Wall Street, because to walk into the polls and pull the lever for either of the establishment parties is to basically give them a mandate for 4 more years of corporate rule. That is the very definition of throwing away your vote. Voting for the Green Party in my campaign is an undeniable call for the peaceful, just, green future that is within our reach right now. Our agenda is the agenda of the American people. Our job is to simply get it out there. This campaign has been like none that I've ever run before. It's like handing out candy at Christmas or Kwanzaa or Hanukkah, because we don't have to persuade people at all. People are already where we're at. We just need to address the fear factor, which I will come to in a moment. But I want to just run through the agenda. We're calling for a Green New Deal, which will eliminate unemployment, put 25 million people back to work in full-time, living wage, community-based jobs that make our communities healthier and stronger, and which also transition the economy to the secure green economy of the future that will put a halt to climate change. We're calling also for Medicare for all as a human right. This is not only the right thing to do, this actually saves us trillions of dollars over the coming decade. There is no reason for the richest country in the world not to be joining the community of nations by providing health care as a human right through Medicare. It's time to forgive student debt. We forgave the bankers who caused this morass. It's time to forgive the students who've been the victims of that waste, fraud, and abuse on Wall Street. At the same time, it's time to provide public higher education as a common good. We did this during the GI Bill after the Second World War. For every dollar that the public invested in free public higher education, $7 was returned to the public treasury. So this is the right thing to do. It saves us money. It's time to do it, and our campaign will make that happen. We are also calling for bringing the troops home now from Afghanistan and from over 1,000 bases around the world in over 140 countries, and to put an end to the use of drones as a weapon of war and as a weapon of spying on people here at home, as a weapon against our civil liberties here at home. We want to cut the military budget in half, because in doing that, we will still be spending 3 times more than the next biggest military spender. And that will bring hundreds of billions of dollars back into our economy to fund the things we need. In addition, it is time to provide for immigrant rights as human rights and to call an end to this terrible policy of the Obama administration, so-called secure communities, anything but secure, which is essentially a racial profiling and deportation program under which this president has deported more immigrants in 4 years than George Bush did in 8 years. So we're going to provide a legal and welcoming path to citizenship, because in this country, with the exception of the original Native American settlers and the African Americans who had no choice, with those exceptions, we are all immigrants in this country. We should be celebrating and appreciating the diversity that our current generation. Thank you. And finally, we need to call a halt to this incredibly destructive and misguided war on drugs. We need to start approaching the chemical dependency and so on as a public health issue, not as a criminal issue. And in fact, we need to legalize cannabis because it is a substance which is dangerous because it's illegal. It's not illegal because it's dangerous. In fact, it's not dangerous at all. And one of my first acts as president would be to instruct the Food and Drug Administration to actually use science as the basis for listing or not various substances. And that would bring cannabis and hemp off the list of scheduled substances from the get-go, which is where they should be. Tax reform, I should mention, is a part of the Green New Deal. Because we need the money to fund it, and we can get that right away. When they say there's no money, they mean there's no money for you, because there's trillions for wars, Wall Street, and tax breaks for the wealthy. So as part of the financial reforms through the Green New Deal, we will break up the big banks, establish community banks, separate commercial from investment banks, bring back Glass-Steagall, establish a transaction tax on Wall Street to discourage speculation and bring additional hundreds of billions of dollars into our economy for what we need, as well as nationalizing the Federal Reserve so that it actually serves people and not the profits of the big bankers. So there are all kinds of ways that we can do what we need to do right now. One final word about the fear factor. We have been told, it's been drummed into us, for the last decade and more that we dare not stand up and vote our values, that we have to vote our fears. Terrible things will happen if we actually vote our values. So we're all supposed to be good little boys and girls and vote for the lesser evil. So a lot of people have done that. A lot of our friends and colleagues have done that over the last 10 years. And it's important to point out where exactly that has gotten us. We have 10 years worth of evidence now that silence is not an effective political strategy. And in fact, politics, thank you, the politics of fear has brought us everything that we were afraid of. The expanding wars, the meltdown of the climate, the offshoring of our jobs, you name it. We get it all in spades if we do not have the voice of the public interest in this election. Excuse me. So we are answering the politics of fear with the politics of courage and standing up for those solutions that we and we alone, as the only independent, non-corporate voice that is national, that is in this race, we can drive those solutions forward. As Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, and it never will. And that is what our campaign is doing in this race, is driving those solutions into the daylight, into the public discourse, where they cannot be stopped. They have a life of their own because this is what the public supports. So I invite you to join my campaign, to actually be the campaign. I ask for your vote, but I ask for your participation, because this is an opportunity like no other, certainly not in my political lifetime, to actually build the party. And whether we win the office and turn the White House into a greenhouse, which would be a great thing, or we simply win the day by driving these solutions forward. And without our voices, they won't even be in the discussion. We are the only vehicle for moving forward jobs at living wages for everyone, eliminating unemployment, healthcare as a human right, students with a right to public higher education that's tuition-free, and for ending student debt and bringing the troops home. We are the only voice of these solutions in this debate. So please go to my website, jillstein.org. Make a contribution if you haven't yet. We are very close to meeting our national threshold for getting matching funds, which will be a wonderful victory for the Green Party. Join as a volunteer, get on Facebook, like, repost, and share, and we can do like Tahrir Square and Tunisia like nobody expected and just blow the lid off of this political system. This is the time to do it. Thank you for being a part of it and for having made this possible. Let's make history together. On same-sex marriage, I mean, clearly there's a lot of political timing here, which the president is, just a master at, and he went out and fundraised immediately, and brought in millions of dollars. At the same time, I want to point out that only 2 weeks earlier, the president had refused to sign an executive order that would have established equality in the workplace, and which would have established economic rights for the GBLT community. The president actually refused to sign an executive order to establish economic equality and justice in the workplace for GBLT. So it's all well and good to say that he personally supports gay marriage, that he thinks it's fine, but he hasn't actually moved the ball forward in any way for the GBLT community. And I don't want to say it doesn't amount to anything for him to have done that. That's a good thing, and I'm glad he did it. But he certainly could have done a whole lot more. So this is, once again, vintage Obama, where he'll sort of go halfway there, kind of take one step forward and take one step back. That is his action 2 weeks beforehand, which really hurt the GBLT community and the many people who have much more to worry about in addition to marriage equality. The GBLT community has been quite clear. They do want marriage equality, but they also have housing problems and jobs problems and poverty problems that are equally critical. About the Tea Party, I think it's really clear that the energy has gone out of the Tea Party. The Tea Party has very much become a public relations campaign and a system of political funding. So it's essentially a front group, a political strategy, a public relations strategy for the Koch brothers and for big money. So, that's American politics as we've come to know it. On the campaign trail, I find we actually have very good chemistry with a lot of the true Tea Party people who just know that both parties smell like a rat. And they know that our campaign is not predatory politics as usual. And while they may not agree with all of our policies, they very much agree with our standing up for civil liberties, our protesting against the control of the banks and the takeover of our political system by the likes of the Koch brothers. So I think, you know, a lot of Tea Partiers are very busy fighting to keep a roof over their heads, and we are speaking to them as well, that we need to get beyond this very co-opted political establishment, and it needs to be a grassroots party that's of, by, and for the people. Thank you. So, yeah, I agree with you. The war on the Voting Rights Act is reprehensible. And in my opinion, we need to stop dead in its tracks not only the war on the Voting Rights Act, but also this incredible racist war on drugs and the war on our civil liberties, which is also very much an attack on the community of color. In New York City, for example, the stop and frisk law, you know, which is directed very much against young African American and Latino men. What happened to Trayvon Martin, you know, is the tip of the iceberg about the incredible oppression and the war that is being waged, the demonization of young African American men. And this is, you know, this is a war that's driven by our drug policy, by our economic policies, and by the attack on voting rights. So assuring voting rights for the community of color is a very important part of the solution. We need to stop in its tracks these voter ID laws that would keep people of color, elders, students, and the poor away from the polls as well. I think, in fact, we need a constitutional amendment to assure the right to vote and the integrity of the vote, and that no one can be denied that right to vote. Likewise, we need to ensure same-day voter registration or automatic registration so that the rules of voting cannot be used as political tools against the community of color and the poor. So I agree with you completely. And on Haiti, you know, I agree with you very much that what's going on in Haiti is an absolute travesty and makes a complete mockery of our support for international human rights and for self-determination. And yes, we absolutely need to, you know, and we haven't formally taken a campaign position. I always am reluctant to do that on the fly, but in principle, I support completely what you were talking about, that we need to demilitarize Haiti and to support the indigenous democratic forces within Haiti. It's an outrage, in fact, that Aristide and his party were barred from running in the most recent election. So the elections have been completely hijacked in Haiti, and this has everything to do with the power of the U.S. It was revealed, in fact, in some of the WikiLeaks State Department communications that money was pouring into Haiti to fight against the minimum wage law, for example, which the U.S. corporations successfully fought. So Haiti is a case in point. You know, it is a symbol of what is going on internationally, and it is a symbol of what the G8 represents on a broader scale, and a symbol of what NATO represents on a broader scale. And the reason that we are there, that my campaign and the party is there in Chicago saying that this needs to come to an end, that we need a foreign policy that puts international law and human rights at the top of the agenda and puts our money instead of into military suppression and the forces of NATO into suppressing indigenous peoples. We need to start supporting a real human rights budget, which will support those local forces for assuring the integrity of the food supply, for food sovereignty, and for local and sustainable economic development and democracy. Thank you. So on nuclear power plants, yes, it is it's a case in point about, you know, George Bush, about Barack Obama having gone beyond George Bush. How many nuclear power plants were permitted under George Bush? 0. 0 for the past many decades, but there are 4 which have been permanent under Barack Obama. He's basically given, the thumbs up to nuclear power, even as Fukushima continues to burn its way towards a China syndrome, some kind of an explosive situation, which still has not been brought under control and continues to be a threat not only to Japan and the Far East, but actually to the entire world. Fukushima could turn out to be far more dangerous than Chernobyl ever was, and there are about 1 million deaths that have been attributed to Chernobyl alone. So, yes, we need to do like many other countries have done, including Germany and Japan, in setting the deadline right now for decommissioning all of our nuclear power plants and to stop the construction of any nuclear power right now. And I would include in that we also need to call a halt right now to any fracking. That fracking is a danger to our water supplies and to our communities for all. And the EPA should be instructed to actually protect the environment and the people in it. And that means to say no right now to fracking before it even begins. And then on the Israel question, yes, we issued a statement just 2 days ago, I think, which is up on our website, clarifying that we are calling for Israel, and in fact for all countries throughout the Middle East, to respect human rights and to take real steps towards supporting them. And in the case of Israel, that means ending the occupation, bringing down the wall, ending the apartheid state which exists within Israel, and stopping illegal settlements. So we are not just asking, we are requiring as a basis for continuing U.S. Support and aid, military and non-military. We're putting all countries on notice that if our campaign has the honor of serving, if I have the honor of serving, we will put all countries on notice, allies and those who aren't allies, that our foreign policy support, any military support, non-military aid, all of it will be contingent on beginning to make immediate steps towards complying with human rights and international law as the basis for international policy. So first, let me say that in the campaigns that I have run in Massachusetts, we have always found ways to fight our way into the debate. And we are determined to continue that fight at the national level and get into the debate. You might have heard that I had the pleasure of debating Mitt Romney in the 2002 gubernatorial election, and I'm glad to say that I was actually declared winner of the debate, in fact declared the only adult in the room, even by the Boston Globe. So Greens do very well in debates because we are uniquely armed with the facts as opposed to the flimsy, manipulative public relations campaign. So I look forward to that debate. Our goal is to claw our way up to 15% in the polls, in public opinion polls. There are 50 million people who do not have health insurance. Our campaign is the only way to actually provide them and everyone else real health insurance. There are 30 million students who are effectively indentured servants right now, and they are gobbling up our campaign as fast as we can get the word out to them. Likewise, 12 million additional homeowners at risk for losing their home. We are the only campaign that has called for a moratorium on home foreclosures. So our hope is to get out there basically on the internet and to take a lesson from Tunisia and from Tahrir Square and do like they did to actually reach out to the constituencies that are already with us and that are just waiting to hear about the campaign. Because if we can get out on those networks through Facebook, we could potentially get to 15% in the poll and then be admitted into the debate. If we are not in the debate, we will be out in front of the debate to live stream answers in real time to the questions, the real answers that the American public wants to hear and that the establishment candidates will not provide. We will be in the debate whether they like it or not. At the state level, I've been a party member and a party builder for about 12 years. And at the state level, we have been able to use headliner campaigns that we hoped to win, but we weren't confident that we were going to win them, but we were able to successfully use those campaigns to change the public face of the Green Party, which brought in new volunteers, new members, established new locals, brought in funds and donors. It really created the infrastructure. Over a period of a couple years, it totally transformed the party. And we did that by running capable, grounded, experienced campaigns that were offering real solutions on the ground, pragmatic solutions in a compelling and informed way. We were not celebrities that were providing a lot of laughs. We were really experienced, hard-working, community-based organizers and political party builders who went there and changed the concept of what the party was. In our most recent election in Massachusetts, which was for state legislature, we narrowly missed a win by only 200 votes, and we got all the endorsements that typically would have gone to a Democrat. They're now going Greens because we are the only show in town for equal marriage, for living wages, for real climate policies that will save the climate, bringing the troops home, for health care as a human right, and for women's reproductive rights. We are the only ones that are out there standing up for what we really need. We are getting the endorsements at the state level, and we are running strong candidates. So having had that experience of actually transforming and resurrecting a party that was not in good shape when we started at the state level in Massachusetts, that party was transformed. So that has been my model for how to use this presidential race to actually build the party, encourage candidates to run at the local level, help bring press attention to them, help them with fundraising, help bring in volunteers to our campaign and to their campaign, and so on. So we are a very on-the-ground, pragmatic campaign whose first and foremost goal is to build the party so that we do as strong as we can in November. But for the long haul, we are here. We're not going away. We are the party that will carry forward this fight for people, peace, and the planet for the long haul. That over the past several decades, we have seen economic and political power concentrate in the hands of an economic and political elite, which is basically running the show now in the U.S., in multinational corporations, in Europe, and throughout much of the world. That there are now, international institutions like the G8 and like NATO, which help establish and entrench this very self-serving, concentrated economic power. And it is that which needs to be transformed. It's clear from what's happening now in Europe that austerity is extremely self-destructive. It's not working, and it is actually, leading to a rising up of the parties of the left, including the Green Party, which is doing very well and has benefited very much from the, what should we say, as the old order falls apart, we very much need a principled new order, a movement for economic and political democracy to replace the old order. And in a nutshell, I think that is what's happening. That is why we see this movement for democracy and justice rising up all over the world, from Tahrir Square to, Occupy Wall Street, to the uprisings in Wisconsin, to the student strikes throughout California, the hunger strike at the University of Virginia. I mean, this is an irrepressible and very healing phenomenon that's taking place right now as we reassert our right as citizens of this country and of this planet to take back our democracy. And as we do that, we can also implement the policies that are really of, by, and for the people that the Green Party has always represented. That is the opportunity of this election, to bring together that social movement with electoral voice to make history together. And that's what we're going to do. Part of our Green New Deal, actually, we are calling not only for traditional green jobs, but we're also calling jobs that meet our social needs green jobs too. So we're talking about funding not only local and sustainable agriculture, clean renewable energy and conservation, public transportation systems, and clean manufacturing. That's all, traditional green jobs. We're also talking about social workers, teachers, nurses, hiring them all back, after school, daycare, violence prevention, all the bread and butter work of social workers. We are calling those green jobs too, because they are essential for the sustainable communities that we need. And so what Cuomo and other governors are doing, and what the president and Congress are doing in the face of austerity, is to say that there's not enough money. But what they mean is there's not enough money for you, because there's plenty of money for just about everything else. Trillions in Wall Street bailouts and trillions in war for oil and tax breaks for the wealthy. So there are just so many ways to fund this. It's not just a question at all the ways. And one way for that Wall Street transaction tax, which I understand is already in effect in our state, but the money keeps being given back. So I guess for starters, let's just suggest to the governor that that Wall Street transaction tax actually be kept and used to keep the mental health clinics open. These are critical clinics that, mental health is the public health epidemic of our era, and this is no time to be cutting support for mental health services. We need to be expanding them and not cutting them down. Occupy is our natural ally, and our campaign has been visiting Occupy sites all across the country. I've been to more than 24 of them to basically say that we're here to support them. We're not going there to say we want your vote, because that is sort of predatory politics as usual. We're there because they're doing the right thing, and they have been just a wonderful boon to this country in all kinds of ways. And there are all kinds of ways for us to collaborate going forward. I think they will be more informal than formal, but that Occupy does not have a system for endorsing candidates or for participating in parties. They have a big firewall against politics, because for the most part it is predatory, and they're doing the right thing to lock out the wolves that are at their door, very much. And I go there and clarify that I totally respect that, but want to be there to support them. And I find when I make that clear, that they start making connections to our campaign in all kinds of informal ways as individuals. And I think that's largely the way that we're going to go forward in this election. And in my as usual, we are not there to hijack their vote or to manipulate it, but are there to work with them on the same agenda. I think, in my experience, they get really excited about our campaign, and they jump in wholeheartedly to occupying not only their communities and the banks, foreclosures, but also eyeing our endangered electoral system. Yes, it's not perfect, but it's not perfect anywhere out there. And the stakes are equally, shall we say, the tables are equally tilted for Occupy, even in the traditional form of holding demonstrations and rallies, with a helicopter circling overhead and the police, in full arms, ready for battle surrounding them. Our effort on behalf of democracy and our civil liberties to protest for our right to exercise free speech and to petition for redress of the terrible economic and political exploitation taking place right now, we need to be doing that in every front we can possibly manage. So that means not raising the white flag of surrender over the voting booth, not giving the predator a pass in the elections, but being there to fight them and make them squirm, because they don't like to have to be faced down with the truth and the facts, where we can win the day in the court of public opinion. So I find when Occupy has a chance to hear that kind of political strategy, that they're right in tune with us, working with us side by side. In fact, today here, we have several occupiers at the Minnesota convention who have never voted before. They told me that they have never even voted, and now they have come to the convention in order to join the party and become a part of my campaign, because they get that we are what they're about and we are strong together. Thank you so much. And thank you, New York, for leading the way. I think in so many ways what you are doing at the New York State Green Party really is the model for the nation. And I am carrying you forward as that model in my mind and in my heart to help all Green parties in all the 49 other states become like the New York State Green Party. And that will be the real win coming out of this election. And I ask for your vote because I think it's our campaign that actually has the experience on the ground that can really build the Green Party for the long haul. That is the real victory in this election, and it's time for us to seize that moment and to win that victory. We can do it together. Thank you so much.